Thank you. Cool. All right. So I'll tell you guys the reason why I'm here is because of her. So a round of applause for Yulia. She's awfully enchanting. The first Creative Mornings that I attended, she got up on stage, made the pitch about Creative Mornings. Obviously, it's an incredible organization, and she's just had such great inspiration, I think, for this community, vision for this community, and the team for Creative Mornings and all the volunteers, of which I know a lot of them, but I'm really excited to be a part of it. So thanks for having me today. Appreciate it. So when they asked me to speak, I'm guessing I'm just going this way. Cool. On the topic or theme of tradition, I read what they had sent out, which you read earlier from Columbia. And I was like, okay, this is a pretty tricky topic for me considering my upbringing, coming from a broken family. When I think about traditions, I think specifically about like holidays and, Christmas. Obviously, we're in the holiday season now. And most of my life, I can say that I've spent time more away from my family in the holidays than I have with, especially as an adult. So tradition is sort of a weird thing, and I was actually really excited to kind of dive into tradition and sort of the characteristics and the qualities of tradition. And so this was something I just found on the internet about tradition. Traditions are sacred because they cultivate consistency and a sense of belonging, specifically connection and community. We're brought together by traditions. They're things that we deem important and relevant to show up to. So, it's been, I think, interesting to me to think about how my narrative is sort of like woven into what the definition of tradition is for me in my life, and ultimately for people in all of our lives. And so I sort of broke it down and I said, well, what are things that are sacred? And like the most simplest form, things that are sacred are life, relationships, and death. The one thing that we can count on is entropy. We're all working towards decay in nature. So the thing that connects the dots in terms of life, relationships, and death is time. And so the most sacred of those is time. The reason why I showed up today is because I really feel like this is a good use of my time. And I hope that all of you decided to show up today for that as well. I'm using B notes to kind of go through my... The weird thing about time is that we have very little autonomy over our time in our adolescence. Primitively speaking, we have parents that are meant to guide us and keep us safe. While under guardianship, there are rules and regulations surrounding our existence. And ultimately, they nurture us and keep us safe during our most vulnerable years. So when you experience your childhood up until adulthood, there are things like during this period of time that are beyond your control. And for me, I can remember a time where I heard the door slam. Sorry, it's a little emotional too. There was screaming and yelling, and there was a call to the police. I was a little boy in my room, and I was crying, and I remember it was the first time that I felt unsafe. And that was basically my first memory of being fearful. Little did I know at that time that I was becoming a statistic of divorce. And the transition went as well as it could, but as you can imagine, my world was spiraling. Everything that I knew to be true and safe had suddenly changed. We moved from Orlando to Cocoa Beach, and away from the man that I knew as Dad. And I'll call him Dad number one, because there's a few. I've never met my biological father. And I learned that, more recently in life, that I actually have a sister and I have another brother. My mom remarried a Marine, and not much long after, we made our way to Hubert, North Carolina, which is near Jacksonville, North Carolina. We lived in a single-wide trailer. Not that mattered as a kid because it was just another home. And not much longer after, my sister came, and then we moved again. Eventually, we landed in Hawaii. Hence the Aloha shirt. Every Friday, we celebrate Aloha Friday at our team. And so, Jeff, raise your hand. He's wearing an Aloha shirt. That's my business partner. Hawaii, or the Rock as they call it, which is in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, 2,000 miles from anywhere. And this is really where the story begins. So let's play a game. How do you say that word next to sacred? Any guesses? Close. Hale himolele. That's good. So the Hawaiian Islands were founded by Polynesians. They sailed from Tahiti by the stars and ultimately landed in the Hawaiian Islands. Similar to the Greeks, they're polytheistic, they're mystics, very good fishermen, sailors, people of the ocean and the sea. And much like the old world, they built tribes and established monarchies. The most famous of these monarchies was led by King Kamehameha. He was the unifier of the Hawaiian Islands through many battles and wars. One war in particular was the Pali, which in modern day is the road or the interstate that connects downtown Honolulu to my hometown in Kailua. And the Pali is important and sacred hallowed grounds because about 1,000 feet up the side of the mountain, King Kamehameha and his men, sort of like a D-Day type battle. And this is sometime in the 1800s, early 1800s, so they actually had guns and cannons and things like that. There were people holed up shooting at them, and so they made their side up this really, really steep mountain and were able to circumvent, and they ended up throwing about 400 of their adversaries to their demise off the Pali. And so today you can go to the Nu'uanu Pali lookout, and there's essentially the grounds where the battle took place. Come 1869, we would see Liliuokalani, the queen, being held up by gunpoint by Americans, businessmen, people that were there for sugar farming. As we know, Hawaii eventually became a U.S. territory and became a strategic military stronghold. What most people don't realize is that Hawaii did not become a state until 1959, which is well after World War II. So we occupied the region for some time. Having grown up there, as far as the culture is concerned, there's a term for foreigners. It's not an enduring term. It's called haole. And so that is like a white man in Hawaii. And growing up was tough. I experienced racism in a real way. I've been spit on. I've been knocked out a couple times. And you sort of learn how to pick yourself up and how to, they call it scrap, how to fight. It's a weird thing, looking back, because, as a kid, I was sort of fighting for my identity in a place that was pretty rugged. I mean, these are warrior people, very big people. For me, I found solace in nature, in the sea, in the ocean, surfing. I got my first surfboard when I was 5 years old. I spearfished. I swam with monk seals as a kid. I had a lot of freedom of time because my stepdad, who was also a warrior, which I admired, was gone a lot. He would be off to battle. He was in the Marines. They took the airport in Mogadishu in Somalia, He was in the jungles of Panama when they took out Noriega, and he was gone a lot. So my mom, raising my sister, who was 9 years younger, it left me to just explore. So I went on these adventures. I get on my bicycle, and I remember the first time going up to which was a crater, but the rifle range, and seeing humpback whales jump. And I was like, what is that? I sat down on the mountainside, and I got to like watch these whales till dark. And not too long ago, I read an article, a Stanford research study on the emotion of awe. And in hindsight, it's a really healing thing. And so I was very lucky that I got to spend a lot of time in nature. But the emotion of awe is the only emotion that allows you to transcend time and place. It's a transcendent emotion. And so being in the beauty and the surroundings of what I was, it was very healing for me. And so thinking about the Hawaiian people, and we essentially made them into tourist attractions, right? You go to Hawaii and there's people doing the hula. I mean, you think they want to do the hula for you? No, they're getting paid to do that. There's hospitality, right? They're making your bed sheets and things like that. But the silver lining is that really these Hawaiian people saw the importance in embodying and fortifying their culture and their existence and their history. And so one of the most significant traditions is the sport of the kings, he'enalu, surfing. And the first, I guess, documented experience of surfing was in the 1700s, even though they think it's much older. Uh-oh, don't play yet. So today, Hawaii continues to be the proving grounds. And the North Shore specifically, there's a wave called Pipeline, which is like the jewel of surfing. And so for me, as a kid, it was always a dream to be able to surf Pipeline. And there's about 50 million surfers in the world. Less than 2% can probably say that they've surfed Pipeline. It is the pinnacle of a surfer's career, if you can do that, because it's just death-defying. And so I have a quick video here. You guys get it. So as a kid, realizing your dream, you feel connected to something larger than yourself, and it drives you to your highest level of achievement. And at the highest level, you have greater resilience. That's become part of my DNA as an entrepreneur, as a person. And I guess it makes sense this whole time I was just trying to prove to myself that I had a life worth living, that had purpose. And in many ways, this personal narrative that was playing out internally, and the illusion of control that I believed somehow I could benchmark my mortality. Surfing the North Shore was something that was beyond my reach until I made that pilgrimage in 2014, which is, if you guys remember, right after I had launched the incubator on Clematis Street and had hosted probably 60 events, 3 of which were Startup Weekend, Global Entrepreneurship Week, and a number of community events. I essentially got burnt out. And so I went on a pilgrimage. I went to Mexico, and then I went to California, and then I went to France, and I went to Spain, and then I went to Hawaii, and I stayed the entire winter. And that was the first year I felt comfortable enough and strong enough to go surf Pipeline. I had to pay my dues, so to speak. And since I've walked in the footsteps of kings and have become a part of a community that has purpose well beyond my profession. So here's a couple photos. This photo, one of the girls that works for us lives at Jack Johnson's house in Rocky Point, and that's where I stayed. So I got to spend some time with Jack and his family. Off to the left, the Volcom House. Anyone familiar with the Volcom House? No? Okay. So the king of pipeline is Jerry Lopez, and that was Jerry's house. And I've got to spend a good amount of time at the king's house. This is me surfing pipeline that year. That's a moderate-sized wave. Still scary AF. This is me taking some photos of the North Shore, just kind of taking it all in. And the next couple are me in Hawaii. I was a hula dancer. We celebrate every May. There's a celebration and tradition called May Day. And it's a celebration of the Aloha spirit. And so I've done my best to pay tribute to that life and all that it's given me in surfing and the ancient tradition of surfing, and have come a long way. So every single year I make the pilgrimage to Hawaii, and I go surf pipeline. So thank you all for having me today. Appreciate it.